The Endorphin Pro 2 is Saucony's super shoe. But the question is, what is it super at? Is it a 10K racer, a half marathon shoe, or can it go the marathon distance? It's time to lace up the Endorphin Pro one more time and talk about it after 100 miles. $18.24 miles total for today in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 2, getting this shoe to the 100 mile mark. And for today's workout, I was doing a marathon workout of 5 miles easy, 10 miles at marathon effort, and then following that up with 3 miles and change at easy pace for the cool down. And I feel like this is the perfect way to round out my testing of the Endorphin Pro 2. Before I give my thoughts on this shoe and how it fared after 100 miles, I do want to go over some disclosures. Saucony sent me these shoes, so I didn't have to pay for them. However, no one's paying me to make this video or to use the shoe, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Saucony Endorphin Pro 2 after 100 miles. First, let's talk about how I've been using this super shoe. I've been using this shoe primarily as a threshold repeats type of shoe. So those workouts where I'm running at that effort level that's in between half marathon pace and 10K pace, where I'm putting enough into the shoe and pushing off hard enough on the shoe to really get everything that this shoe has to offer. The Power and PB material that's in here is lightweight, but I think it is on the firm side. And in my mind, the only way to really get everything out of what that foam material can do is really to be loading it hard. So I think the vast majority of my running in this shoe has been at that threshold level of effort. It also can do a lot of work at faster paces as well. Last week I did a marathon workout, but it was at 5K paces. So that workout was 20 times 90 seconds at 5K pace with 1 minute recoveries, or basically 20 times 400 meters. And I felt like the shoe also could really rise up to the occasion there as well. I felt like the Power Run PB plus this carbon fiber plate got loaded really well when I was pushing off for those 5K pace efforts and springing back in a really powerful way. I've also raced a half marathon in this shoe, and I feel like racing half marathons is, I think, another sweet spot for this shoe as well. Again, a little bit slower from that kind of like threshold area. We talked about 5K pace. Now we're going a little bit on the other end at that half marathon pace. I felt like the Endorphin Pro 2 did really well. I came in 8th overall at that half marathon I ran earlier this year down in Florida, and I got a first place in my age group. So it's not so much that the result that matters all that much, but I felt like I was really able to get a lot out of myself and run and perform well on that day, thanks to this Endorphin Pro 2. Now for today's workout, I was running at marathon effort for the bulk of the workout. And so that's even kind of further on this end of like the speed and kind of like effort or force spectrum. And so I'm not putting quite as much into the shoe. And while I still feel like that this shoe is certainly a special shoe, I'm certainly feeling that this is a premium racing foam with a carbon fiber plate in the shoe. I also feel like I'm not kind of like getting everything out of the material. I'm still feeling that it's a little bit on the firm side, which is a feeling that I don't really get when I'm running at half marathon paces all the way up to 5K paces. I feel like at those faster paces, there's just more forces involved. I'm pushing off harder, I'm hitting the ground harder, and I feel like the level of shock absorption kind of is just right once I get to that kind of level of impact. At the marathon pace level, I'm still kind of like, I feel like kind of like just bouncing at the top end of that foam, and I'm not really like squishing it enough to get the nice rebound from it back. So I'm kind of like not using it to its full potential where I might be using it in some of those other races and faster paces. But that's not to say I didn't have a good time running with this shoe on this run. I did really enjoy it, but after 18 miles, or probably a little bit before that even, that's when I started to really feel like this shoe for me is not a marathon racer, just because at those longer distances, when I'm not fully getting the kind of like impact absorption from the foam, it starts to feel a little bit too firm for me underfoot, and I start to get some discomfort. So for me, it's not a marathon racer, but as someone that trains for a lot of marathons, I do really enjoy having it in the closet, because then I could bring it out for those hardest of my workout sessions, and I feel like this is a great shoe to have. The other one, like kind of, I don't know if it's a quirk, but it's something that I've noticed in kind of maybe like half of the marathon super shoes out there. Some of them do this and some of them don't. And this one does it a lot. And what it does is that I feel like it's very sensitive to foot strike position. Now, I don't have the cleanest foot strike. I don't have like exemplary running form. So one of the things that happens to me as I'm getting very fatigued towards either the end of a workout or the end of a race is that my foot tends to kind of like kick out, or I think what's happening is my knee kind of like throws my feet forward. And what ends up happening is that there's a little bit of braking that happens way in the back here. And so a lot of times in my shoes, I'll see a nice wear point right back here, and I think that's what's happening, is that it's kind of like breaking as it comes in because the foot strike isn't clean. I really feel when I'm doing that in this shoe, and I also really feel when I'm not doing it in this shoe too. So when I'm landing more squarely kind of in the midfoot, forefoot of this shoe, I feel like not only is it more efficient because I'm not braking, but I also feel like it's more powerful because I'm getting more kind of like energy from my muscles through the legs into the shoe onto the ground. So not only is it reducing friction, but it's increasing power output too in a really pleasant way. So there's a very direct kind of feedback that I'm feeling every time I get the foot strike right, or every time that I get the foot strike wrong. So that's something that I've been kind of relying on this shoe to kind of help me figure out how to make sure I'm being more mindful later on, deeper into those threshold sessions, that I got to keep the form clean. I got to run pretty. I got to run tall and not let my feet kind of slide around and get lazy, so that I can kind of get the most out of the shoe. So that's another reason why I really enjoy training and doing my workouts in the Endorphin Pro 2. So with all that being said, in terms of how I'm using it and how I'm not using it, now let's talk about how this shoe has been holding up over the last 100 miles. And I think that it's been doing a fantastic job. The plus side of this Power Run PB being a little bit on the firm side is that it kind of maintains that resiliency for a very long time. And so for me, this feels like a shoe in terms of the foam performance is fresh out of the box. Like I wouldn't be able to tell that this is a race shoe that has 100 miles on it already, because it still feels so fresh. It feels like it's still got a lot of pop, a lot of pep, and a lot of liveliness, especially when you're getting even faster than your marathon pace. If we take a look at the outsole, there isn't a lot of wear in some of the usual area on this backside of the heel. And also in the area where I am hitting a little bit more, I feel like there's not a lot of wear to find. You really have to look for it. The one area that I'm seeing it a lot is the same spot that I saw in the Endorphin Speed 2, which I also recently got to the 100-mile mark in, but it's the same kind of edge on the outside. I think what's happening is a lot of times my foot tends to roll in a little bit. So maybe even as it's getting a little bit sloppy, maybe it's sliding in and rolling in a little bit. So that's kind of like the first contact point, and I think that's where it's getting the most wear. But in terms of the rest of this midfoot and forefoot area, there's a little bit of wear. Some of the detail and intricate pattern work on the face of this outsole is starting to show a little bit of wear in a handful of little spots, but there's not a lot of it, and there is still a lot of other detail that's still very distinct in this outsole pattern, which tells me that it's holding up really well. So I'm very impressed again with how much Saucony is able to do with so little rubber on the outsole and how well that rubber is holding up. And as we move to the upper, Saucony makes, I think, some of the best uppers in racing. In a lot of ways, it feels very old school and retro because it's not some sort of transparent mesh, nothing see-through, nothing that's some sort of hybrid matrix something material. It's just kind of fabric. It's very thin. It's a little bit floppy. There's not a lot of structure and rigidity to it, but the shape of the shoe fits really nicely on my foot, and I never feel like there's any tight spots, squishing, crunching, anything like that. The upper just fits really well, and I never have to think about it, which is kind of the best compliment that I can give to a race upper. I just want to feel like I'm connected directly to that midsole foam material, and that's exactly what I'm getting from the Endorphin Pro 2. So overall, I've been really enjoying my time with the Endorphin Pro 2, even if it's not a shoe that I can run a marathon in. I find that it has a very useful spot in my training rotation, even as someone that races primarily marathons, because it is so useful for those marathon workouts that I want to do. And at $200, I feel like in comparison to its competition, it is a good price unless you're specifically looking for that marathon shoe. Then it doesn't matter how cheap it is if it's not a shoe that you're going to take for that marathon race anyway. But because it's not at that $250, $275 as some of those other marathon super shoes out there, it's something that you can add to the rotation if you want that higher end workout shoe or half marathon racing shoe in your lineup. Plus, there hasn't been a lot of changes between the Endorphin Pro 2 and the Endorphin Pro 1. I struggle to figure out kind of what the differences are. So the Saucony website no longer shows the Endorphin Pro version 1 on sale, but there's still some units floating around there on the internet, and you can sometimes find them as much as 50% off the current Endorphin Pro 2 price. So if you're really looking for a bargain and don't want to spend $200, $250 for a workout shoe or a half marathon racer, look for that Endorphin Pro version 1, see if you can still find a pair of overstock somewhere else on the internet, and you might be able to find a really fantastic deal. So if you have any other questions about the Endorphin Pro 2, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream I do Monday through Friday over on my Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?